Wait, what do you mean your entire startup is fully open source? How do you make money? All I told them was,
Welcome to the Beyond CUDA podcast. I'm your host, Jeff Tatarchuk, co-founder of TensorWave, the AI cloud built exclusively on the latest and greatest AMD GPUs. Today, joining us, we have Anush Elangovan, seasoned innovator in the tech world, currently the corporate VP of AI software at AMD. And before joining AMD, through the acquisition of Not AI, in which he co-founded, Anush worked on Google's first Chromebooks, held engineering roles at Cisco, contributed to innovative startups beyond. We're excited to dive into his journey and learn more about his insights of the world of AI. Anush, welcome to the show, man. Good to see you.
thanks for having me, and nice to see you.
Nice to see you too, man. Well, I want to dive into a little bit about your background. A lot of people see you active on Twitter. They see your role actively publicly with what you're doing at AMD, but I want to dive into a bit of your backstory. Can you share a little bit about your journey before Nod AI? Like what got you
Before not
into
AI,
before Nod? Like
very-
what got you into systems? What got you into
how many
software, and what
how
led
many
to
decades do you want me
Nod?
to rewind?
Give us the high level.
Okay, the high level. Well, I'll fast forward the early part of my life. I went to a boarding school in India. Did my undergrad in India in a state called Tamil Nadu, which is in the south of India, and then I was going to go to University of Alabama, and then I decided to last minute switch to Arizona State, which was a good call. I wanted to move as west as possible to come be closer to Silicon Valley. And then I did my master's. Wanted to do networking and network security, operating systems. So I took kind of the lines notes on like OS.
Why? What made you decide to get into that? What was the interest that led you to that?
So when I got to do my master's, it was more like, yeah, you can pick whatever you wanted to um, work on. And so I picked network security, and I did my thesis on DDoS prevention. So just kind of like large scale network attacks, how you could potentially, like streamline your detection mechanisms, etc. And then that led to, a job, an internship at Cisco. And back then, Cisco was the $500 billion company, and they were like going to be the first $1 trillion maybe. But it didn't happen. But they gave us, I think, 50 shares or 500 shares, something like that, in '99 or something, and that was like, they were the darling of Silicon Valley then. So I went back to work on switching, just basic L2 switching, L3 switching. So like a lot of low level networking stuff. Spent 4 years there, and then I had this trigger. There's like I can't spend 5 years, and so I went to FireEye as one of the early employees there, as like I think employee 9 or 11 or something like that. Working with the original founders and technical leads, we were doing memory chain check analysis, and so it tied in operating system fundamentals and networking, and they were, I was working on like how do we mitigate attacks and that. So I spent a year there, but then the product was ready, and they were trying to sell it, and they were not. I felt like I was ready for my next challenge, and so I went into. I wanted to start a company doing storage stuff, but then um, Jayashree was starting a company, a small group inside Cisco doing switching, like software switching. So I went to that group and started work on that. That became the Nexus 1K, which is like, software switching layers. So I spent about 2 years until I got that product. I think it was like employee 4 or 5 or something like that. Again, sub 10. And we got the product out, and then I was ready for my next challenge. And it's like, okay, this is the time I would go start a company. But I joined a bunch of folks that came out of PSMI and like a silicon background. And there was a small startup called Agnilux. So I joined Agnilux again, like as employee 4 or 5. And we were doing Chrome and Android. Like, how do we fuse smartphones that were just coming out, and desktops and PCs and client computing. And a few months in, Sundar and Linus acquired us to make us the core of the Chrome OS team, because they just announced Chrome OS and Chromebooks, but the team wasn't yet ready for like building and executing on that. And so, I had it was like a 4-year deal, and I was like, nah, I was going to start my company, and this thing happened. So I was like, okay, fine, it's going to be 3 years. And so I told my boss, 3 years is exactly what I can do. And so it was 3 years and one day after. So I quit on a Tuesday, and we incorporated Nod 8 a.m. on the Wednesday, May 1st, 2013. And funnily, I met my wife that week too on Friday. So
Man,
a lot of things happened that week in 2013. Um,
lot of changes and acquisitions and
yeah, that was the starting of Nod.ai, and we and there's a journey about Nod.ai itself, right? It was just like, hey, we're going to quit and start and do something. It wasn't like we're going to do ML compilers, which is what we ended up doing when we landed at AMD. But we started with, hey, the next frontier of human computer interaction is going to be either um, gestures or speech. And we chose gestures. So we built a smart ring that you can put on, it's like the Aura rings, but we had interactivity in our mind, and we still have a lot of the core patterns around, interacting with things, not just health check, but like payments with smart rings. And we thought, the input will move to the human body, and the human body is going to become the input mechanism for quote unquote the IoT around you and the ambient compute around you. And so we invested in building a really small smart ring that in 2014, Andrew Ng picked us out as the best AI company, and people were like,
what's AI?
"Yeah, it's like 2014 AI company. What is?"
Wait, so this was Nod? Wasn't this is the beginnings of Nod initially?
Yeah, this was not. And people were like, why is a smart ring company and AI? But Andrew was right. And he was like, the amount of complexity that goes into like the Kalman filters and back then Kalman filters and thing for gesture recognition on a small, dinky microprocessor, was, what he saw is what we were doing. Like, I wouldn't say frontier model research, but frontier, um, for that time, for how we were doing motion gestures and all of that, in a system. But the journey from then, we were. Often get asked like, how did you pivot? What is the pivot? It's like it's a constant pivot. It's not like it's every day.
Every day.
It's a pivot. When the people will show up in the morning and they'll be like, wait, what are we building today? Uh, and I'll be like, yeah, this is what we're building today for the customer. Well, there's a lot of that, but it took 10.5 years of Nod to get to AMD. So that's the high level summary of multiple decades.
Amazing. Amazing. Well, it's awesome to hear that you've had the experience with software and systems and um, building a company, getting acquired by Google, and then jumping out and doing it again and going on another 10-year run to get there. I'd love to dive in deeper into Nod. I mean, you talked about, going in on gestures, building the ring. But what was the transition? When did you really start seeing that the wave of AI was building and, transitioning from, going from the ring to gestures to really going all in on AIM or going all in on AI, and then seeing the need for more, I guess, hardware agnostic AI tools that you guys continue to build. So I'd love to hear more about the journey of Nod.
So 2013 was more about like, I guess it's just like post ImageNet, right? Like, um, and all of that it's just like early days of AI. And for us, Kalman filters and that itself was like challenging, but doing it on device. So it was on device AI back then. But we were essentially a peripheral looking for a pairing with something else. Either you had to pair with a TV, a set-top box, or a VR thing. So we started working with Oculus before it was bought by Meta and Facebook, to provide like a 3DoF controller. If you look at YouTube videos, you'll see some Nord videos from like when we had like shooting games that we'd built, or some interactivity like that. But over time, like by 2015, we were trying to do that with 6DoF controllers, which is like a full spatial tracking, not just a ring, but a game controller kind of thing, so that the VR hype and Magic Leap's hype was like kind of in the upswing. So we were like, okay, maybe we pair to that ecosystem, and people would see the value of what we're doing. We got to a point where we were starting to build cameras in the controller, and we could track the environment with those cameras. And so it's a lot of positioning and 6DoF like SLAM tracking. So it's all like visual thing. And we were doing some level of like machine learning AI models for location and 3D reconstruction. The early days of it. Now I think technology or the models have developed pretty drastically. But we were kind of building towards that. And then in like 2015, 2016. Um, I had I'd been in touch with one of the vice presidents of who had done OMAP 4 back when my Agni Lux days in 2019 from TI. And so he was running a Movidius. And so we started to build and optimize on Movidius. And Movidius is kind of like, it's the underpinnings of the Intel NPU right now, right? So we were programming the NPU back then, and they have these shave cores, which has like very explicit memory movement between DMA and things. So you had to like explicitly move all of this. And then if you get it into the Spark cores, the Open Spark Leon cores, it'll be good for what we want. And we were showing like 60x improvement on the like CNN blocks that came from the normal Movidius SDK to what we were doing. And we were doing like power performance profiles of like on device model deployment that were pretty significant. So we shared it with a lot of other companies, and we were doing a prototype engagement with Magic Leap and a few other existing uh, what do you say, headset manufacturers, AR headset manufacturers, right? Like pretty much all of them we had some sort of engagement with. But again, we were still a peripheral trying to use this technology. And then we slowly branched out into like, okay, fine, if we can do it on a Movidius, can we do it on broader, like, as the data center part was starting to like get deployed, we were like, okay, let's try this on an FPGA. And that was the first time we got some Xilinx FPGAs, and we started to do some low precision training and inference. So we had our own little quantization mechanism, and we started to implement that on the Zinc platforms, and that was good. But then as we started to do that, that's when XLA and MLIR started to come out, and we were like, oh, this seems like a real opportunity to build a retargetable, compiler infrastructure that can, target any hardware, not just NVIDIA, not just AMD. And by like 2019, 2020, we kind of like, got into this mode of like, okay, let's just build the next generation of an ML compiler stack. And MLIR was maturing pretty significantly. And that's when we had Stella, Lorenzo, and a few of the EV team from Google join us at Nord to form like a core, like, okay, let's go after ML compilers. And that's when we came up with Shark, which was like, it's our answer to what, it's an alternative to CUDA, but it'll work with a bunch of vendors. And by the time we ended up at AMD, we had 10 design wins across all of the major hyperscalers, across a lot of the accelerators that exist today, and obviously AMD. And the big breakout came out when the RDNA 3 was being launched. The performance of I think it was Stable Diffusion at the time. Stable Diffusion was, not optimized on RDNA 3 yet. And because of our retargetable architecture, we were able to, in 6 weeks, we got it to outperform a 4090 at the time. And so launch day for RDNA 3 was able to show good performance on the most relevant models because we were able to use Shark and Erie. And then that triggered more engagements with AMD, and then the discussions, obviously got to a point where it was strategic, because at one point Shark was supporting more AMD hardware than AMD officially supported. Even today, but now we're bringing that to core ROCm itself. If the LLVM compiler supports it, we expect the ROC to be able to build and run across any of the AMD cards. In general, I'd like to see community support for the last 10 years plus of AMD cards. Obviously, the official support that we do would be a reduced set that goes through full QA validation, etc. But since we are fully open source, and Nod was fully open source too, it there was a good jive in terms of what we're doing, and that was another part where people were like, "Wait, what do you mean your entire startup is fully open source? How do you make money, right?" But here we were with.
Did you start open source before even joining AMD? The whole stack was already open sourced?
That's correct.
Yeah.
We were 100% open source.
Yeah, explain that. How do you build a business around open source?
Exactly. That was the question that the VCs were like, "Oh, great." But, good thing was, our founders and like our VCs who came in early kind of like stood by us for the full 10.5 years. And that could just kind of gives you a like how people invest versus it's not just here it's 18 months and I need a quick turnaround, right? Sure, that's like buying a lottery ticket, but there's also investors who stand by you for a decade.
So you had the values of open source from the very beginning.
That's right.
Wow. Yeah, that is big. And there's more investors that are investing in the open source ecosystem, but it does seem counterintuitive at times. Hey, you're giving most of this away.
All I told them was a variant of speed is the moat. It didn't have the punchline like speed is the moat, but I just used to say you just have to move faster. If someone else can catch up because they see your code, then you're not doing the right thing anyway.
How big was Nod at the time of the acquisition?
When we were acquired, we were like 38 people.
Nice. Well, explain that. So I remember before TensorWave, we were working with the FPGAs and working with Xilinx, and that was one of the big complaints was there's no compilers, especially for FPGAs, and there needed to be somebody to come in and help solve that problem. And so it makes sense why you would go all in on creating a hardware-agnostic compiler, because Intel and everybody else was trying to crack this code. They were asking us, who are your customers?
Yeah.
Who is doing this? Because it's so hard. But walk us through the process as you started working more with AMD and you've been doing this for 10 years. What that acquisition process looked like from a startup and you and your co-founder, and as you were considering the process of getting acquired. Did you start the company with the idea of getting acquired initially?
Actually, no. It wasn't like it was just like I set myself the time, right? Like so whenever we got acquired in 2010, or yeah, what is it, 20? Yeah, so it's like 3 years, right? So I said 3 years and 3 years and one day. Like I set that time when I joined Google. So there was no like, oh, I'm going to think about it. I'm going to take 6 months to figure out what I'm going to do, and then I'm going to time it right. It's like, okay, time to go, time to start doing. And sure, we're going to start doing this. I literally remember like 2 weeks later, like the first board we had was a big PCB, and it wasn't a ring at the time. It was something like a smartwatch plus something, right? And we're like, oh, it's going to track all your fingers because it can track your muscles plus, your thing with a camera, something. And then, a couple of people went home, came back the next morning, and the thing on the thing was like a little slant kind of like that you hold like this. And then that the next morning it was like a ring, right? So it wasn't like pre-planned and thought about thing. We just knew we have to do it. Like we were going to figure out what we were going to do, and the space was kind of there. It's just we're like, okay, let's get 6 or 7 people that, I think the original founding team came from Apple, Google. Hirsch was like our CTO, came from he's building flying cars for Larry Page. So everyone had like a good background, and I just knew that we're gonna do something, right? But there wasn't like oh yeah, there were enough times that if you went in with the view that, oh, I'm gonna go start a startup and sell the startup, and then I'm gonna da, 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 I don't think you'd have the stomach to see it through for 10.5 years, right? Like 10.5 years is like,
It's a
we
long
have
time.
babies that'll go to college, right? Like my 8-year-old kid is going to be in college by the time I finish the next 10 and a
That's
half
right.
years. So,
That's right.
um,
But the transition to the acquisition, going from, walk us through that acquisition and then, um, going again from startup into a larger enterprise and what that transition's been like.
so the acquisition itself, like I said, like that RDNA3 effort, the launch thing really jived. There were a lot of people that it was, resonating with. And we'd been trying to get AMD to, like we had like 7 SOWs or something like that before that one opportunity that Christian Lafort, who went on to be the stability CEO, and then now he's at NVIDIA. But he took a chance with us to say, okay, let's go show this. It's 6 weeks. If you, d- I think the deal was something like if you deliver, you'll get paid, right? So we're like, great, we'll take it. Anything is great, right? Um, so we took that chance, and AMD took that chance with us. But the early part of it was like 7 SOWs that we were trying to figure out the right people, and we had similar SOWs with Xilinx that we were trying to explain the benefits of what we did, but it was that moment that bit flipped to say, oh, I see the value of what's going on, right? Like, um, but I think that triggered some discussions and like good meetings with Victor Peng, who was there, who was the president, Vamsi, obviously, and Lisa, and it was like just unanimous mission alignment, is how I'll put it. And I think I could see their commitment to doing the right thing. They could see our hunger to do the right thing, and and I think Victor and Lisa, like the way they kind of phrased it, like is how I still work today at AMD, which is, just think of it as Nord is acquiring AMD, um, and operate like that's how you do it. And to this day, I do truly believe that they've kept their word in terms of like supporting how we giving us the ability to operate like that, right? And so that's why I think I'm super bullish about how the um, the outlook looks for AMD. So to answer your question on how's the transition to the enterprise, I think the question should be, how's the transition for an enterprise to be a startup?
I like that. So how has the transition? Because I know, like the Instinct GPUs, in talking with the other, folk within AMD, they do say the Instinct division within AMD is a startup. They came from zero and have been building this for the last 5 or so years. And how has that internal startup at AMD been going?
I think very well. Obviously, AMD is a 55-year-old company, and it's tens of thousands of people, right? Like so it's not a 38% startup that you could just be like, great, make a left turn today, tomorrow's the right turn. You're planning for people, and it's still a large organization, but it's increasingly become very agile. And I will say the reception um, to doing the right thing has been fabulous, right? Like, and that's why I'm super bullish about how what are the outcomes if we continue to execute like this, right? Like, it's just we have a very solid hardware product portfolio. We have a very solid open ecosystem approach that's inclusive of everyone to come do the right thing, and then we just are passionate about doing the right thing, right? Like, stay humble and take like each step forward, right? Like in the, and and if we could grind for 10.5 years at Nod, it's
That's right. That's right.
you need to look long term and
That's right.
and just do the right thing, right? And I think the benefits and the outcomes will be automatic if we're dialed in.
That makes sense. So taking that mindset, that 10-year, purview that you can look into, that you can, hey, this is a 10-year grind. This is where we're going. This is what we need to do. Lisa has set the vision, set the roadmap, and just slowly been taking steps in, building these high performance accelerators. And now that you are at AMD and you're leading, AI software at AMD, I mean, one of the things we hear time and time again, like one of the biggest issues with AMD is the software. And we always show people that AMD does work out of the box, but the perception is that it doesn't. And so, what are the things that you're doing from within AMD to to help work on that? We know, you've mentioned speed is the moat. We see it, in what you've mentioned before that, I've seen it. You're an action taker. Whenever we discuss ideas, even in passing, hey, what do we need to do? What needs to happen in order to make it happen? You're not just sitting around making plans and strategy. You're implementing and taking action. And so, what are some of the things that you have been doing, and what do you see as the map in order to really stand out and compete head to head with the incumbent, go head to head with NVIDIA?
The key of it is I'd like to change the perception and the narrative from issues in AMD software to the trust in AMD software, right? Like we want it to be that, yeah, AMD software is a platform that we're going to build for the next 10 years. It's going to work, right?
That's
Um,
right.
do you care about what version of Chrome you're running in your browser right now? Highly unlikely, because you don't care. Is it like Chrome 135 or 136? I don't know. It just works. So
That's right.
what do I care about it? That's where we're going to get to with Rock, right? Like, and that's, like the core, software development. I mean, the build release team, all like ex Google folks that, I'd worked with back in the Chrome days. They did Chrome, Android, and the um, build, test, release methodologies we're weaving into the fabric, right? And that takes a little bit to show up, because the perceptions are a lagging indicator in terms of like what it is. But I think I think Rockham is in a much better state than even like a year ago or 2 years ago, right? Um, I personally tell people, if you have an issue with anything Rockham, tag me, because sure, there'll be one issue that they're like, in usually it's Radeon, because that has a lot of like exposure that we had to cover, and we're covering that. But over the next few weeks, months, Windows support for Rockham is going out. We already have that support with the Rock build system that anyone can build. It's not just like a release of something, right? And then we're going to get it into like just how you install PyTorch. Um, all of those will kind of like cause an inflection point, this year, next year, where we will get to a point where it's just works, right? And so
Why doesn't it just work out of the box today? If somebody is wondering, because you're right. When I hear people talking about it, they are referring to things that were bugs or issues a year ago. Like, it is a lagging indicator. But why were there some issues?
yeah, if you actually go look at like the Rockham GitHub, you'll see a complaint from me in 2020 on like my GFX 1030 doesn't work, and I had to compile Tensile, and we were not even working on anything to do with like I just got one and I was trying to use it, and they were like, no, MI 100 is only supported, Radeon isn't, and I was like, oh, so yeah. So and it is prioritization, right? And I think it is like, hey, yeah, it's like this, we are enabling one to customers. That's how focused priorities were, and it wasn't focused to get that exposure. But that mindset has changed because ROCm is the product, right? And we want you to build on ROCm, and it's just ROCm supports X number of GPUs. In fact, we're retroactively adding community support, right? To say, yeah, your Vega, there are people that hang on to their Radeon 7s and they're like, I'm not letting go of that 16 gig HBM, right? And we want them to be happy too. It's not like, you have to do some GFX override and do some gymnastics and da-da-da. Now you just go to the rock and you build it, it'll work on your Vega, right? We're not publicizing that as much because it's historic, but for those who are in the know,
No, the developers. I remember when we first started, that was the first question. Is like, why doesn't this work on my consumer GPU?
yeah,
And that was a big piece that the developers wanted access. They could put in their workstation and get up and going. And so you have been dedicated. We've seen you on stage, doing the chant, developers, 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 really focusing on bringing the attention, not just focusing on hyperscalers, but bringing the attention to the developers. Why is that important? Like, why not just focus on selling GPUs to these hyperscalers who are going to buy hundreds of thousands of GPUs?
yeah. I think it's kind of intertwined, right? I do strongly believe that like what Steve Ballmer did on stage for .NET. I know people make fun of it, but the guy had a vision for like what they had to focus on, right? That did trigger a transition in their Windows .NET framework thing, right? And that solidified a lot of their developer ecosystem, and we do want to get that mentality for Rockcom. It's not just about like, oh, the hardware. It's like, yes, the hardware has to be great. That's table stakes. That I'm very confident in what the AMD hardware team will deliver. But now we want to lead the customers onto an experience that just is delightful, and they're like, yeah, if it's here, it'll work. So I do think we're already there. Like GPQ OSS came out, it just runs on ROCm. There are no code changes that we're asking you to make. There's no like change torch.cuda to something else, right? Like it'll just work. All the engineering to map backwards, we have done, right? We want the experience to be as smooth as moving from an a competing x86 platform to an AMD x86 platform to moving from like a competing GPU platform to an AMD GPU platform. So we've done that in the past on the CPU side. We do hope that we will accelerate that transition and make it easy enough for you to do it um, on the GPU side too.
I like it, man. I know you've done a lot of hard work and things are moving, changes are happening fast. It is true. If you do run into any bugs or issues within the software, if you do ping Anush on Twitter, he will respond. He is their customer support. L1, dude, you're great. L1, you're killing it, man. And he knows exactly where to go to escalate it to get things fixed. And you have been moving truly fast in that regard. Where do you see the future in all of this? Like, what needs to happen on the software side in the roadmap? We've talked to others that are working in the space, working on compilers and kernel, generation and other things. And, people saying that CUDA is the moat, on the competing side. Um, as we're moving forward, and things are moving quickly, what needs to happen? What are you doing at AMD and then also within the larger ecosystem to get behind this?
Yeah, I think I'd like, at least on the AMD ecosystem side, for people to forget that there is software, right? It's like, sure, CUDA, great, ROCm, it just works. So
Yeah,
I don't care what version of Chrome browser I'm using. That's
that's
what I
right.
want to use. Great.
What are things that you're currently working on, or what are things that the larger ecosystem can jump into to help fill the gaps on and speed up that timeline?
Like on a single node, and in anything that's like, known path towards like large scale training, large scale inference, that all should just be there today, right? We're there today. And if you're not, like you said, tag me on X or reach me on Slack or email me anush@amd.com. Happy to like dig into it. Like the table stakes, you will be robust today. If it isn't, it's a high priority for me to fix right away. But then table stakes and putting dinner on the table, um, it's like, what are we doing for test time compute? What are we doing for like RL stuff, right? Like there are cases of things that may have been factored into like the design phase and the research phase that we are now starting to move, right? So which is we want to move from a port to platform to like build on platform, right? So that you can actually build on AMD. So then you don't need to worry about memory bandwidth or memory capacity, which we are like superior. And you'd shard your model differently. You'd do your HSDP or your FSDP, pipelining differently, and uh, so so I think what needs to happen is more podcasts to, to get
That's
people
the
to.
solution. That is the solution to all
Podcast
of
is
our
the
problems.
solution.
More
Um,
podcasts.
yeah, to get a little more, awareness. There's like, deep pockets of, um, you know, Xerox is the only photocopier in the world, but no, there are other photocopiers in the world. But I mean, not to necessarily say, which uh, that's a good analogy, but it's just awareness, right? It's just we want people to know that there are alternatives that are ready today, and alternatives that we are passionate about fixing if there is any issue, and obviously partnering with yourselves, like TensorWave, to make sure it's accessible. And so you should definitely say subscribe now, and we'll give you some credits.
That's right. That's right.
Keep the
Subscribe
project.
now, and AMD will give you all kinds of credits. No, and you're exactly right. And we see this now more than ever, is just getting the word out there, showing that, yes, AMD does work. You can run training and inference workloads at scale in production. We see it. We have customers with thousands of GPUs. We know that a lot of the hyperscalers are using AMD, but it's getting the word out there and sharing. And I liked what you said about it's not a port too, but it's something you can actually build on
That's right.
and be a system in order to do it. Well, continuing to look forward, what are you excited about in the next quarters and the next year to come on the roadmap that you guys are working on as things are heating up? They're talking about the MI 355 up against the B200s and this fight that's going on for supremacy in this space. What are you excited about, and where do you see the true opportunity for AMD to get an edge here?
Yeah, I think the MI 355 is a fabulous product, right? And if you haven't, yeah, I'd encourage folks to like get access and test it out. Obviously, 325 is like the cluster that you have bought on, and I think the size of the cluster is public, right? So
Yeah, 8,000.
8,000, yeah, 8,000 cluster, 8,000 GPU cluster. That's pretty significant. But we are bringing on clusters that are, even much larger, that I'm personally involved in, that we're helping test in the 355, 325, 355 uh, timeline in the weeks, months leading up to our next generation platform, which is rack scale with 450s. Um, but we're also thinking of it, holistically, right? It's not just a rat race towards like, oh, I can do this, right? There has to be end customer value, right? Like there is end customer value even with 300 325s with the memory capacity advantage over B200s. You don't need a liquid cooled setup. You don't need it's great if you have it. We support that too, right? Like it's no problem. But you could do one-off, like, boxes that are just self-sufficient for DeepSeek serving, right? And
That's right.
so there are use cases that we can unlock, but in the end, we should focus on how the end customer sees value in running on AMD platforms, and there should be a follow on to walk the last mile of AI, right? Like, sure, we generate great tokens, we have reasoning, and then how does that touch people's lives? I think that's the part where AMD is really good at, because we have a pervasive AI story that starts from the data center, all of this big iron, but then you have PCs, we have client laptops, we have millions of laptops that are going to be ROCm enabled. Just the magnitude of like Strix Halo volumes, and you'd have ROCm on them, right? So a college student could just pick up a Strix Halo, and they can do all of their development, and then they can just send you an email and be like, "Hey Jeff, hook me up with the 325s," and they can run a cluster scale job, or they can do vice versa. They could do some distillation. They could do research on all of that, right? So the footprint that AMD has, um, I'm super excited to unlock, right? Like as a team, we're like working hard to make sure that the footprint of the software story is robust, that people want to build on it and know that they can go from cloud to client with AMD there by your side.
We like the sound of that, a TensorWave from cloud to client.
Right.
Make it easy as possible. I know your team has been working really hard to make it accessible and easier and scalable across the board from developer to hyperscaler. Wrapping up here, what does beyond CUDA mean to you?
I think it's the future. I would I see an um, open field for innovation for folks to not be locked into one ecosystem, right, or one manufacturer dictating how your apps should look, or how apps being your AI manifestation should look, right? Like it reminds me of Symbionois and another end company, right? So yes, that's how being locked into one ecosystem looks. But what's exciting for me is let let us lift all boats. Let open research flourish. Let open ecosystems flourish. We want innovation at every layer of the stack. We want innovation right above the hardware. We're building the hardware, obviously, right? But then every part of the stack, we're going to validate and provide you a validated solution. So it's not like, here are all the parts, go build your own car. No, we'll put together what you have to do for the whole car, and it's just fully like you can customize it to what sings to your heart, and unlock AI that way.
What are some of the resources that if they're a developer who's wanting to jump from NVIDIA to ROCm, or for somebody's looking at making the switch and trying AMD for themselves, what are some of the resources that where can they go to get access to some of this stuff from AMD?
Contact Jeff.
We are happy to help. We're happy to help.
Click on the subscribe button. Contact Jeff. Number one, go to
Yes, number one.
devcloud.amd.com. We
That's
definitely
right.
have that. We're gonna, obviously our documentation. We're gonna be streamlining it and have a lot of like easy to use Jupyter notebooks, etc. But increasingly by the end of the year, you're gonna have enough footprint on client systems that AMD exists in, that you could start playing with ROCm there too, with your iGPUs, etc. And yeah, I'm not kidding in terms of like reaching out to Jeff. You have a lot of
We have GPUs. We have
yes,
GPUs that
exactly.
you can develop on, and we can give you access to all the things. I like it, man. I do appreciate your time and the hard work that you and your team and the vision of Lisa and Vamsi and the rest of the crew. That's why we went all in on AMD. People always think that we're crazy at TensorWave for doing it, for not diversifying ourselves, but we do see the trajectory. We are aligned with the values of open source and building on top of that, and building truly a multi-vendor ecosystem that will support this new wave of technology that we've never seen in our lifetime, that's going to truly impact every level of society. And it's cool to be at the foundation of it all, and love what you're doing, man. Keep it going. Is there something, Anush, if you were to snap your fingers and be like, hey, if we can solve this one thing and it would be fixed, what would be that one thing? If somebody were to focus their time, because we know you're focused on a lot of things, but if somebody be like, hey, I want to focus on this to help contribute to the larger thing, what would that thing be?
Yeah. So first, thank you for having me, and thank you for being a good partner. Right. I think we've had a very good partnership, and we continue have a very good relationship, and I'm looking forward to the impact it'll have at scale for folks. So and always reach out if there's anything that anyone of your audience runs into that I can help with. To snap my finger, I'd like more hours in my day.
Nah,
There we go.
no.
Isn't there that
I
joke
think I
where
think
like
you got one. You got an extra second. You got an extra second.
I got did I get one extra second?
What
Is this
extra
what you meant?
second, man?
Like
You got what extra? Use it wisely. Use it
it
wisely.
would. I think the bottom line is it's it may be a little more applicable to anyone, right? I think life is short, time is valuable. Focus on things that you need to do for what means most to you. And I think I do truly feel that both in my professional life here and obviously on the personal side, but um, you know I think that will give us prioritization on what we need to do to make sure there's an impact for customers and end users who are increasingly placing their trust in AMD. So, evangelism is obviously one part of it, but the ability to execute to deliver that is what I'd like to, dedicate that 1 second you just gave me.
That's right. Well, trust is important, and trust is built over time. And
Over
you
that
have
one
been
second.
over that 1 second, but showing consistent action. And I've seen trust is built over time because a lot of times you could say certain things and you could try to, posture certain things, but trust is built by consistent action. And I could say we've seen the consistent action that you and the rest of the AMD team have been taking over time as trust is continuing to be built. So thank you for doing that, man. And thank you for being on the show. Thank you for all the work that you do and looking forward to continuing the partnership with you.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you.